comments. We, of course, welcome your feedback anytime by mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84114-5476, by email at council.comments@slcgov.com, or via our 24-hour phone comment line 801-535-7654. Comments we receive on agenda topics are shared with council members and posted to our website, slccouncil.com. We will now begin our work session with our first agenda item, which is an informational update from the administration. Andrew Johnston is on there, who is the Director of Homeless Policy and Outreach. Katie Schnell, Executive Assistant to the Director of Community Outreach. And I see we have Weston Clark, an unscheduled but always delightful surprise. All right, I'll turn the time over to you all.
I like to keep you guessing a little bit. Is that okay? Great. Thanks for your time. We'll go to the first slide. Next slide. Of course, the reminder of the feedback page that we encourage residents to go to regularly if you want to give your opinions on things going on in the city. Next page. We have some construction updates, not entirely engagement, but always important to know. The paving on 2100 South, the paving between 1100 East and 1300 East is now complete. The remaining work in the area includes installing medians, minor concrete adjustments, and final road striping. And we anticipate all lanes will be open by mid-November. Note in the record the cheering from council member from District 7. The sewer work is currently underway at the 700 East and 900 East intersections and will continue 2025. Sorry. Waterline installation on the north side of the street between 700 East and 1100 East, so ongoing. For Virginia Street, asphalt removal is underway this week with paving planned for Thursday and Friday this week. After paving, remaining tasks like speed cushion installation, concrete work, and landscape restoration will continue through mid-November. On 1100 East, it is fully paved from 900 South to Logan Avenue. Concrete islands were constructed last week on top of the newly paved road. Crews are working on final details to complete this project by the end of October. On 300 North, crews have milled the roadway and are now focused on paving this week, and from the 7th to the 11th. Paving will occur in block sections between 600 West and 800 West. After paving is completed, minimal work will continue for the rest of the year, and crews will return in 2025 to complete the work between 800 West and 10th West.
This is District 2, by the way.
District 2. Thank you, Councilman. We'll correct that. Next slide. Just a quick update on Love Your Block and SLC Corps. The awarded projects for Love Your Block are well underway, with 11 community-led initiatives successfully completed and 3 more nearing completion. A great successful project in Central Ninth over the weekend. I hope everyone has a chance to go check it out. Love Your Block is preparing it to open applications for a new cycle throughout the month of November. Outreach efforts and internal discussions are ramping up to ensure a smooth and impactful launch for the upcoming round of those community projects. And then for SLC Corps, just a quick update on that. We had a very successful, what ended up being sort of a month of service, centered around the 9/11 day of service in September. SLC Corps facilitated and coordinated a wide range of impactful projects across the city on the 7th and the 14th mainly. These efforts included alleyway cleanups, playground refreshes, letter writing campaigns to first responders, residential home cleanups, clothing drives, and hygiene kit drives. Hundreds of volunteers came together to support and uplift communities throughout Salt Lake City, demonstrating incredible teamwork and dedication. In total, we had 440 adult volunteers, 101 youth volunteers, 1,557 volunteer hours, and 27 project sites. So it was an incredible work by the team and the community during September. And then I'm going to pass it over to Katie Schnell to talk about ACE. And the next slide.
Thanks, Weston. I'm Katie Schnell. I'm Weston's executive assistant, but I also get to manage the ACE Fund, or the Arts, Culture, and Entertainment Fund in the mayor's office. And I'm excited to announce that we're now taking applications for 2025 ACE grants through November 1st. So people have about a month to apply. We've seen both an increase in applications and increased ask for funds in the last few years, but are thrilled with the budget increase we received this year to hopefully be able to better meet the needs and desires of the community. in 2024, so this last year, we were able to support 126 community events, from the Utah Pride Festival out here on Washington Square to the Seniors Out and Proud Summer Barbecue that offered a safe space for connection for seniors in the LGBTQ community, the Girls on the Run 5K to the USA Climbing World Cup, or Afro Utah Festival, the Filipino Festival of Utah, just to name a few. As you can see, we were able to support both big and small events, new and long-standing, and I'm excited to see what rolls in for 2025. To learn more about the grant, folks can attend our next info session, which will be in a few weeks at the main library on October 23rd. I'd also encourage everyone to check out our website, linked on the mayor's office page, for eligibility, details, and links to apply. And again, the deadline is November 1st. Next slide, and we'll hand it over to Andrew. Nope, I have one more slide. The events coming up this next week, we have the Homeless Resource Fair. We also have the Pizza in the Park event happening in Richmond Park with the Central City Neighborhood Council. That's ACE funded, as well as the Downtown Farmers Market, which we have this Saturday and next Saturday. Those are the last 2 weeks this summer in Pioneer Park, as well as the Day of the Dead celebration happening at Trolley Square this week, which is also ACE funded. And then the Wasatch Hollow Fest is coming back this year, happening at 15th and 15th. That is my actual last slide. You can go to the next slide to Andrew.
Thank you. Our council members, as you can see, still high utilization of the resource centers. Excuse me. Encampment impact mitigation work will be on Victory Road this week, and then the rapid intervention team will spend a lot of time on the west side, particularly on the Jordan River at various locations. Resource Fair the 11th of this month at Pioneer Park, and then the next week, following Friday, would be Kayak Court. This year it's been moving a lot from the river, since there's fewer folks near the river in some ways, and also expanding to other locations. So we'll keep talking about that as we go forward, about how that evolves. We had a question about the micro shelter community that opened phase 2 a couple of weeks ago. It has 50 beds like the first phase did at the city location. It's a nice location. I encourage you to go out and see. We can set up some times to see those. Some more infrastructure was put in there, and it's well designed. Right now, I believe they're probably running about half, maybe a little more than half capacity. Part of the reason is because there's some folks moved on since they closed the first phase, or chose to go to another shelter or other options. And they're going to take the available beds and try and use some of those, at least for folks who are working, who are staying in the other shelters. So it may free up some capacity in the other resource centers in the short term, so more folks could use those beds. It's also set up in a way that allows folks who are working a much easier time in and out in some ways, and some privacy for what they're doing. So I anticipate you'll see some of that coming up. We can talk more about that process, about how folks get on the list and get placed in there. It's a combination of the outreach teams, Switchpoint, the operator, and then the collective group who works on coordinated entry services as well. The winter homeless services will start opening more beds starting next week. I want to go back maybe to the first item on that list there about the Homeless Resource Center shelter utilization. Generally, in the last 5 years, we've talked about the 3 resource centers for single adults, and we've also talked about, in the wintertime, some other locations, right? The year is different in the sense that the system never closed the West Valley facility over the winter. So it's been open all summer long with 170 beds. In the city, they also continued to operate St. Vincent de Paul every night, all through the summer as well, with 65 beds. This number reflects all of those beds included, which means when we've left those extra beds open, 200 plus beds, they've also been full every night. There's been a lot of talk sometimes about it's not shelter, people won't go into shelter. And what we've told people for multiple years now is in the wintertime, we fill all the beds we open. In the summertime, we fill all the beds we open. There's still a pent-up need. People want to come into shelter if we can make that available to them. So it is a need. I would anticipate the goal again for this winter was, in addition to the base beds, another 1,000. We're currently looking at over 700 24/7 beds and probably a couple of hundred code blue beds. We can get more in the details as things get sorted out. Tomorrow there is a State Homeless Services Board meeting, and they'll be discussing a little more of this as well. And then the task force in Salt Lake County will also be announcing some more details coming forward about locations, times, processes, all of that. We can keep updating you on that as we get into October a little further.
Thank you, Council. Councilwoman Young?
So just a quick request for those updates. I would love to know kind of the status of where the requested state funding, like where we are in terms of that commitment and expenditure level. And when there is a number, what is the ask for this upcoming year related to additional resources? I know that that is not something we have today, but when we do have it, I would love for all of the council members to have that information so that we can be supportive of those resource requests.
So, Councilmember, funding for winter services or year-round services or both?
Yeah, so I'm more, I know that there was a big push at the state level, so less about the city-specific or county-specific resources and funding, more about the state funding. I know they provided us a block kind of in a one-time fashion. I'm just curious how far down the path we are with expending that block and what then a future request would look like to be able to continue to address needs.
I think the short answer maybe for that question is the legislature allocated a one-time grant of about $25 million that was specified to use for capital expenses to increase beds, so a location or locations for more shelter. That has not been expended to this point. Some of it was set aside for some administrative needs, and that's been allocated. But there's a little under $24 million of that left. As far as operational funding for all the existing shelters, that's also almost all state money as well. And that was done on I think basically it's going to last for this year. The request was a 3-year allocation. They got 1 year. So I would anticipate that'll all be used by the end of this fiscal year. And there'll be another discussion coming up at this legislative session in March or February about further allocations needed starting next July.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Councilmember Pui?
Just quickly, I mean, I mentioned this already, but I know that it takes a little while, but I would love to see that, maybe you already sent this or someone did, the report about the micro shelter community and, you know, about our experience with the micro shelter community. And it was a hard fight here in this council to get to try that, and it worked out. And I want to make sure the state took that baton to move the micro shelter community and to have those 50 beds available. But I would like the point, at least for me in my mind, was to get other cities and other projects like this happen in the city and in other cities in the valley. So I would love to see that so we can share around. So that will be an important piece for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members? Will we be updated formally if winter beds are being put in our district or city at some point? I know there's some element of preemption happening with determining where they go now, and so I'm not holding anyone liable, but I would like to be prepared for constituent engagement around it.
Certainly, to your point, the state statute specifies that a task force comes up with voluntary plans. If those are not sufficient for some reason, then the state can preempt. And this year that has happened, so the state has preempted, which means they take over some authority from cities where these are going to be located. In some cases, there are also may situations where property transactions are in place or happening. So it may be in between ownership. That's happened in the past. And so there may be times when it's a little bit tricky about timing. But yes, I think you're correct. We do need those discussions and statements about this is going to happen, here's when, how.
And on a preemption, will we be able to, so my very first meeting ever as a council person was the placement of the shelter at the Ramada, and I was able to advocate for certain security measures that would make neighbors feel safer. Even in a state of preemption, are we able to advocate for any sort of conditions that protect neighborhoods?
We can. I think the question is sometimes equates to funding, and that may not be an open question as far as options available. But yes, I think that's certainly for a safety and security perspective. In your example of the Ramada, having a discussion what happens around and whose role it is to do that is important. Yes.
Yeah, because it would be really great if we didn't get unfunded mandates that stress out an already stressed out constituency with more demand on our resources, patience, and time. So that's not for you. I know you understand that. That's for any other stakeholders who might be listening in. So thank you. All right, council, any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, thank you all so much for being here. Council, item A2, the ordinance for a zoning map amendment at approximately 3052 East Emigration Canyon Road has been postponed. It's been removed at the applicant's request. It will be heard at a future meeting. So with that, we are going to move to item number 3, which is an informational update on the Tenant Resource Center and the Landlord-Tenant Program. Allison Rowland, Council Policy Analyst, is going to join us, as well as Meredith Muller, CAN Policy Director, Rudy Mathis, CAN Project and Policy Manager, and Arturo Garcia, Director of Revenue Operations. We'll turn the time over to you all.
Guess you are. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a briefing that was requested by the Council Chair and Vice Chair about these two programs, the Tenant Resource Center and the Landlord-Tenant Program, also known as Good Landlord Program. These programs were included as strategic priorities in the Thriving in Place Anti-Displacement Plan, which was adopted by the Council last October. The administrative staff from both CAN, meaning Meredith and Rudy, and Finance, meaning Arturo, are both here because these two programs are in different departments in CAN and Finance, respectively. I'm not sure which of you wants to go first.
I think I was volunteered first. And I think there should be a presentation, if we can pull it up. Is that your presentation? Yeah.
Oh. Do we have that? Scott, do we have that other presentation? Oh, there it is. Beautiful.
There we go.
Thank you.
Perfect. So good afternoon. The Landlord Tenant Initiative Ordinance was originally adopted on in December of 2011 and went into effect September 1st of 2011. The goal of the program is to help foster health, safety, and welfare of residents and residential neighborhoods. Next slide, please. Landlords who participate in the landlord program are authorized a 95% reduction in fees on their rental dwelling. Participating landlords pay $35 per unit fee, and non-participating landlords pay $342 non-participating fee. These fees are calculated based on the cost of city services directly associated with rental dwellings. The intent of the discount is to encourage education and training while helping landlords create a well-managed rental dwelling complex and unit. The landlord-tenant ordinance requires that all property owners of residential rental properties obtain a business license. As defined, rental dwellings is used or designated for use as a dwelling by one or more persons and available to be rented, loaned, leased, or hired out for a period of 1 month or longer, and arranged, designated, or built to be rented, loaned, leased, or hired out for a period of 1 month or longer. Participating in the program is voluntary. Next slide, please. Participating landlords must attend a city-approved training course consisting of not less than 4 hours of instruction. The names of the participating landlord training are available on the business license website. Participating landlords must complete a similar 4-hour training every 3 years from the initial training. They also required to submit a signed management agreement with the city. They also agreed to comply with the regulations, including fire safety, zoning, unit legalization, sanitation regulations, snow removal, weed control, noise regulations. Additionally, they're also required to comply with the non-discriminations and fair housing as provided in local, state, and federal law. The city is limited to what we can require based on state statute 10-1-203. Next slide, please. Thank you. Some of the benefits of the program are better maintained operated properties, more profitable property ventures, decreased in crime, enhanced property values, and they received a 95% discount on their per unit fee. Next slide, please. Thank you. The landlord-tenant direction, we establish a relationship with property owners or managers by notifying and tracking police calls of any nuisance behavior, including loud party or music, noise ordinance violations, domestic disturbance, harassment, and assault. We also track tenant complaints of housing violations, and we assign inspectors to track the progress in the repairs or correcting the issues. Next slide, please. Before 2011, the city required 3 units and above to be licensed, and we had approximately 2,200 records. We currently have 3,996 rental records associated with the landlord-tenant program. Many of these rental records have many rental properties related to their record. We currently have a total of 6,650 rental properties licensed, totaling 50,689 rental units. 418 properties are owner-occupied and are not required to participate in the landlord-tenant program. And 165 properties have chosen not to participate in the landlord-tenant program and pay the higher per rate on their unit. Next slide, please. Our staff, our division is made out of 1 supervisor and 3 staff members. One of the staff members is dedicated to reviewing the police reports and calls. Next slide, please. Our future goals for the program to create a tenant booklet educating renters about the laws and their rights, work with CAN and their Thriving in Place program to help landlords better understand tenant rights, incorporate suggestions from Thriving in Place to update forms and trainings. The landlord training is provided by a third party, so we need to work with them to get the training updated. And we may require additional staff if other requirements are proposed. And the final slide.
Thank you. Council, questions?
I think this is great. I'm pretty familiar with the program in District 4. My question is, have there been any reports or any changes that are recommended as we see enforcement needed in some of these homes where unfortunately the tenants are no longer participating or they're creating nuisances in neighborhoods? Sorry, do you mind putting the mic on, please?
Let's try this again. We have not removed anybody off the program for nuisance violation.
Has there been an increase in nuisance violations at all?
Well, we've had an increase in property and units, so it's hard to measure that level.
Okay, and
So-
what would deem an appropriate violation to be removed off this program?
So the one tenant at one property would have to have 5 violations, and then when we contact the owner or the manager to see what they've done, steps they've taken to prevent this, if they've done absolutely nothing because they weren't following their training, then they could possibly be removed.
I think
If they are working with the tenant and trying to rectify the situation, then we wouldn't kick them off.
So this is a great tool, I think, especially in District 4 and East Central. You've heard me talk about all the noise violations, especially around game day or, the increase of events happening at the U. Unfortunately, I've worked with the mayor's office and other staff to try to better articulate this program and it's not functioning. I'd love to see research where we can create and coordinate better history and archives of violations happening.
And when we review the police reports, the problem is we don't have any information. It's not collected, so we don't have names. We don't know if they're tenants. So those are the struggles we have. So we can't provide. If we can't provide, if we can't get them to say yes, this person lives there and verify it, then we can't use that as a nuisance against the property.
And just to reiterate, in case some of my colleagues don't know, do you mind walking us through that process? Why would an officer be involved?
When the police are called, that's how we get nuisance violations. We don't take a neighbor's complaint. It has to be verified through the police.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Lopez Chavez, one of the things that I did want to state is that we are working currently with the police department administration to get a better process to move forward with these loud party violations. So we're working currently with administration to get a better process so that they get to business licensing in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Young?
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that. So I really appreciate having an opportunity for tenants to be able to say, hey, I'm being, mistreated or, inadvertently being asked for, expectations from a landlord that are not within the law and the confines of the law. I do think to Councilmember Lopez Chavez statement, sometimes though, I don't know if it's reasonable to think I as a tenant am going to report myself in terms of, noise violations and some of those other components. And yet it does get to some of the key issues of what is your landlord doing related to their monitoring and their kind of compliance within that space related to that role and responsibility of being the primary property owner. So I support you in, whatever we can do to be able to find those types of solutions that allow us to be more just thoughtful about the neighborhoods in which these homes exist, and ultimately try and find those solutions.
Thank you, Councilmember Young, and thanks to the administration. It's something that Joe Love and I have been working on together to isolate the primary homeowner and not to put attention back onto the tenant, because again, we think that the economics will transfer eventually to the tenant. So we want to make sure it's a productive policy. This obviously is a great program. It has really high utilization and use. But I'm curious, as our city evolves and as we see an increase of rental housing, how we can best advocate and help, one, our tenants be protected, but also our landlords have good rules in place and guardrails so that they can participate and, reap the reward of that participation.
I would like to, following up, would it be possible for us to get a metric that would show if the complaints are commensurate with growth or if there's a disproportionate growth in noise complaints? Is that a data analysis that we have available?
It is. It's just going to take a while to
Okay.
go back and look at that.
Yeah, I don't think it's has to be tomorrow, but if we could get that eventually, I think also in terms of us managing constituents' expectations and things, it's an important data point to have for us.
And out of 1,000 calls we review in a month, we send out like 50 letters.
Okay.
So
perfect.
that shows they're either unfound or too late or the information isn't gathered.
Yeah, any information you can give to is the 1,000 calls stagnant or is it growing, with the anything like that you can have that can help us understand the landscape, not like do this tomorrow and preempt everything else you're doing, but I would find it valuable. Councilmember Dugan?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I appreciate the program here. And a couple of questions. I appreciate the idea that we want to look at the nuisance complaints of the renters, but I also want to make sure that we're tracking, we have enough inspectors on the renters' complaints that their property is not being maintained well enough from the property owner. Because I've had a number of complaints where renters are saying, hey, I got leaky toilets, I have, mold here, I have this, and the city is not inspecting and reinforcing that portion of it. So is there a need for more inspectors or a need for more staffing to take care of the renters? Because a lot of times those renters are fearful of losing their place if they do push on something, and especially with the market right now, that, hey, a roof is much better than no roof, so I'll just take what I have, and I will be silent on the complaint. So tracking both those metrics, I think is valued, because I see tenants or landlords join this program to save a couple $100, and then they really don't do anything, and we're not really enforcing it from our end.
We do have a process in place, so if a tenant contacts us, we have civil enforcement go. They have to get access to that unit only. The problem is they're fearful, then they won't do it. So even though it's out there, we don't see a lot of it. We have a complaint form,
Yeah, so and I don't know I don't have an answer for that, but we need to solve that one, because that's a health and safety issue for our residents who, and we need to be the one who's trying to have a solution for something of that nature. So I'd really like to see how we can do that. Whether it does require some extra funding or staffing to do that, I think we'd be all open to that idea.
Thank you. Councilmember Wharton?
Yeah, I also would just like to see more of the data that supports the conclusions. That I understand that participation by renters in the program is one indicator of success, but I wonder whether we're meeting other goals of success when if the goal is broadly the health, safety, and welfare of residents. It sounds like we're good at getting landlords to recognize the benefits of participating in the program, and making it worthwhile for them, cost effective for them. But that's only a part of the mission. So I would like to see more data to know whether this is a successful program for everyone. And I'm sure it's not, I don't mean that as a criticism of you and your staff or anything, but I think that I also have heard concerns about renters not feeling like this is really a resource for them, or being concerned about getting involved. I know that several years ago that the person that does the presentation had some inaccurate information about tenants that was in the presentation. I had an attorney contact me and say, these are some things that are just wrong. And so I want to make sure that we're giving out accurate information and that we're incentivizing tenants as well to see this as a resource.
Chair, may I add a final comment? I love where you're going with this conversation. I wonder if there's up-to-date information, or if we could ask of this program to give us new research, quite frankly. There's a lot new information out there. Tenant laws change every year in our state, and they're becoming more restrictive and harmful. And I think when I think about the policies we're working on, or the funding mechanisms we're working to help tenants, again, we were just presented in the RDA, we're a renter majority city. So it's something that I think, in lieu of a state that restricts us and our ability, I think there are programs such as this that could help educate the tenant on their rights, quite frankly, get them to the resources they need. I'm really excited by our future mechanisms put in place to help transition tenants to new housing opportunities, for example, in case they come to an injunction where they can't find resolution in a situation that's harmful to their ability to live safely in our city.
I want to acknowledge that we've asked for a lot of data analysis, and that is a cumbersome and difficult thing even for people trained in it. I would love to see what you all need in order to not only do this, but to transfer to a sustainable way of doing it, if that's using Salesforce or a CRM or some sort of automated method. Any transition we have, I'm willing to entertain notions that you would need both manpower and software, or apps or things like that, because I do think for us to keep our finger on the pulse of this, especially when we allied this with the conversation from the Thriving in Place initiatives, and it becomes more dynamic and responsive, the data will only become more important, and it doesn't seem rational to take time out of your daily work to do that. Data should just be a maintained thing. So, Mary Beth, did you have something to say?
We'll work with the administration. One of the biggest hurdles, it's a very manual process. I'm going to be honest, it's very labor intensive and very manual at this point. And that means that we have to have other departments come to the table and have larger, bigger discussions so that we can get this automated. Just because I know, because this is what I did my thesis for my master's on. So.
As usual, Mary Beth, we could not be in better hands than yours then. I see Tammy Hunsaker here. Is there information about the Thriving in Place and the Tenant Resource Center that goes along with this presentation? All right, then stay close because, you know, it might bring up other conversations. But if we could bring up the CAN team and allow you all some time to.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Rudy Mathis with CAN, and Meredith is here as well. And yes, you can go to the next slide. So I wanted to start by just kind of giving an overview of what we've accomplished. Thriving in Place turns 1 year old in 9 days. So 9 days from now, you better sing happy birthday. But we've done a lot. So, and the Landlord Tenant Initiative is one of those pieces that we're going to be working on. But just an overview, we have a city implementation team. And I should say, like, the parenthetical number letter combo is like the task in Thriving in Place that it's referencing. So a city implementation team, we've done that, making ADUs easier and less expensive to build. We've done a number of things for that, including an ADU ordinance, created an ADU library, and the RDA recently closed an RFP for financing, and we'll be kind of hoping to review those soon. We're utilizing publicly owned property in the form of the former public safety building, and as well as Fleet Block, we're moving forward on those properties. Developing and adopting a community benefit policy, which you all did in March. Adopting the affordable housing incentives, which you all did in December. Next slide, please. Investing in community land trusts and acquiring and rehabilitating unsubsidized housing. Those are both things that in August CAN presented to the council on, and we received funding for NOAA, or naturally occurring affordable housing preservation, and then helping tenants become owners. We invested in the perpetual housing fund, and then improving and expanding tenant resources and services. We host quarterly renter resource fairs, with the next one coming up on October 23rd at the Glendale Library. Next slide, please. So those were things that were done, things that are coming up. The Tenant Resource Center, which is part of why we're here, that is forthcoming, hopefully very, very soon. Relocation assistance funding for tenants is also forthcoming, hopefully very, very soon. Defining indicators and helping define data systems. We have hired an intern, and part of that is working with the Landlord Tenant Initiative to understand what data we have, how we can better present that, and actually track progress, not just for Thriving in Place, not just for Housing SLC, but also for what are we getting out of the Landlord Tenant Initiative or the Good Landlord program, so that we can better adjust as needed. We're working on language for a displaced tenant preference policy that would apply citywide. In the community benefits policy that was adopted in March, there is language that pertains to instances where there's a zoning change requested, but we would like to have something citywide, so we're working on that. We're also doing more on like wealth building and helping tenants become owners. We have an intern on our team who's working on that. And then you heard about the RDA Wealth Building NOFA 30 minutes ago. And then improving and expanding tenant resources and services. We were fortunate enough to be selected by a team of NYU grad students to fulfill their capstone requirement to help us develop a tenant advocate program that would kind of work in tandem with the tenant resource and navigation services. So that was a lot, partly to say like thriving in places working, at least from the implementation side of things. And then once we are able to track that data, which is one of those things, we'll be able to show if it's working from the data side of things, and if we're actually making a difference in people's lives. Next slide, please.
Hi, I'm Meredith Muller, and I'd like to just talk about the Tenant Resource Center. So this Tenant Resource Center is really meant to be that one-stop shop for any renter in Salt Lake City. They can come and access a lot of different services and resources, be referred to community partners to get their needs met, and they can do this either online through our website that we are currently building, is mostly built. That's both action-oriented and educational, so there'll be buttons there like, if you need help, you'll be taken to the intake form where you can fill out your information and someone from the Tenant Resource Center will contact you. Or you can also read about all the different educational materials that we have there, so just tenant rights and tips for rentals in Salt Lake City. So this will also include all of our navigation services, this Tenant Resource Center, and that is run by the Community Development Corporation of Utah. Again, they can access things in person, they can stop in at their offices, or they can go online, or they can call in. And CDC Utah will make sure that they have a warm handoff to any resources that they connect them to in the community. Next slide, please. So in the last year, we've taken our $92,000 from fiscal year 23-24 Funding Our Future funding. We've developed an RFP and issued that and selected a partner. We have a contract in place, again, Community Development Corporation of Utah. And we are currently in the final phases of getting ready to launch this program. We're just finishing up our intake form, which at this point is just a tech issue. So it's built, it's ready, it's good to go. It's just a matter of getting it into the proper software form so we can actually get all that data taken in from our clients who need help. And we're expecting to launch just later this month.
Thank you so much. Council, any questions,
I
comments?
apologize. I do have a couple more slides
sorry.
adjacent to the Tenant Resource Center, if that's all right.
Sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
I should have said next slide. Yeah, so Landlord-Tenant Initiative, as we just heard about, and Rudy mentioned, we did hire an intern to help with this, so they will be researching best practices and looking at measurement of this program, and any proposed changes for that feedback will be brought back to you all for approval. One final slide. And then I also would like to talk about our Relocation Assistance Fund for tenants. This is $180,000, again, from fiscal year 23-24 from Funding Our Future. That was awarded to Community Development Corporation of Utah. And this money will be going towards tenants who are displaced. We have developed a displacement policy for this, and so we have 4 qualifying events. If your property or your home that you're renting is demolished, if there's substantial renovation or rehabilitation, if there's a change of use of residential property, or if there's a removal of rent or income restrictions from the housing development. We have decided to award up to 4 times the amount of the HUD fair market rental unit based on either the number of bedrooms or the number of people in a household. So if we have 4 people living in a 1-bedroom, we would go with the greater of those and award based on a 4-bedroom rental rate. That is our final slide.
That was the last one.
We'd like you to show the one that says questions, but we can also just take questions.
Councilmember Pui.
Quick.
The city doesn't track the rental agreements throughout the city. How do we know when someone needs this funds?
They would have to provide whatever they received from their landlord that shows that a qualifying event is taking place.
So we have to receive an application because
yes,
we don't have
they will
track.
verify that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there is no way to disseminate this information but through the tools that we have already, like social media and whatnot. So to tell the renters throughout the city, since we don't know who they are or where they're renting. And this is one of my concerns about these strategies around rental, which I think they're very much needed, is that we have very little opportunities to connect with them unless they are seeking some funds from us or they are signing up for a program like the Good Landlord program. But I struggle with some of these tools that they sound very good, but I still don't know how many people know about them, and the people that know them the most probably will not know. So it's a great idea. I still think that there is a lot of space to grow and learn about this.
Councilmember Mano?
Yeah, I have a couple basic questions. So Tenant Resource Center, is it a place?
That was my question too, thanks.
There is a physical location. So CDC Utah, which is located on 17th South and 5th East, there will be a location there where people can go, but they can also call in. They can use online tools to connect as well. But yes, physical location that people can access.
And it's staffed. You said you have one intern, but is it staffed by CDC Utah staff?
Yes. Yeah, so the staffing that we paid for, I think they have a couple of people that they've hired to help ensure there's coverage at all times, and yeah, that'll be fully staffed and not by an intern.
And all right, and the 92,000 or whatever that we allocated through the annual budget from Funding Our Future, is that being then transferred to CDC Utah in order to operate the Tenant Resource Center and pay for that staffing and overhead and all that?
Yes.
Okay. And so one thing, okay, great. Now I understand what it is a little bit better. It's in my district. That's great. I think the question of how to make sure that when we're talking about this, tenants, hear about it, but also know that it's not in this building, it's over there, and here's how you get a hold of them, and here's what their website is. I think the public education is important. One thing I don't know if this is the right place for this service, but my hunch is that it is. With the Affordable Housing Incentives Ordinance, we created an ordinance that incentivizes a lot of new affordable housing units. A lot of them would be in very small buildings, and buildings owned and operated by people that don't have a LIHTC partner and don't have enough units that they're going to hire professional maintenance and like management company. So my question is that I've had since we adopted that ordinance, and maybe this is now the place to start thinking about a solution to that, is I don't know how that tenant or that landlord is going to income qualify the tenant that is supposed to live in that 80% AMI unit. And so I'm wondering if within the Tenant Resource Center needs to live a place where I, as a tenant that believes I can qualify for an income restricted unit, can go in and get qualified through the Tenant Resource Center and take that qualification then to the landlord that is operating a fourplex, two of which need to be rented to an 80% AMI tenant, and say, here's my certification. Now you're then complying with your Affordable Housing Incentives deed restriction in order to do that. And seems like if we're creating a place where tenants go, this might be the place that we can also add that additional service to. But I'm fairly certain that the owner of a fourplex is not going to have the sophistication to be able to do that. So I think that it probably needs to live within some sort of city subsidized place, and it seems like this maybe makes the most sense. So just a thought to put out there, but something I would like to have more conversations on in the future as this Tenant Resource Center gets up to speed, and as I'm working in my day job as an architect with clients and saying, hey, we have this ordinance, you should use it. They're like, well, how the heck do I know? How do I know that I'm renting it to tenants that are going to be 80% AMI? And I don't know, but so I think that those units are going to start coming online. So now's probably the time to get the infrastructure to get those tenants qualified and get them connected with the units that are, I think, going to be coming online in the next little bit, I hope.
Yeah, thank you for that. This is just the first phase of the Tenant Resource Center, and the navigation services is the first part. I think any thoughts that you have on how we can build this out to better serve the needs of our renter residents, we'd appreciate that feedback. So thank you.
Before I transfer to Councilmember Wharton, I do want to just register that I'm a little concerned about the exclusive location of that resource center. We're facing massive displacement on the west side, and at least some office hours in a library or something would be very, very welcome on the west side. So, Councilmember Wharton.
So I'm really glad to hear that the resource center is going to be opening soon. What do you think, what were the barriers in getting that open? And what do you foresee as like other barriers in implementing other parts of the Thriving in Place?
I think the biggest barrier, the technology thing, whether the city was gonna house that data, if we were, how we were gonna transfer it securely. So navigating that type of stuff, since we were collecting some personal information, we wanted to make sure we were handling that very safely in a way that is not going to compromise anybody. And, you know, I think we're trying to do a lot, and we are trying to do it on a shoestring budget as much as we can. And so, you know, we'll do what we can with what we've got, but there will be things like, as mentioned in the landlord-tenant program or good landlord program, if we have these additional requirements that may require additional staffing, it may require additional funding in order to operate them. And so one of the things that we're trying to do this fall with some of the things that we're working on is have kind of phased approaches where you could have a full build out that's, you know, going to get amazing results, or you could have a scaled back version that's going to get good results. And we would like to be able to weigh those, you know, when we have questions, come and present those and figure out kind of what makes the most sense from the city standpoint, and where we need to, we can pilot programs and see what works, like we're doing with the Tenant Resource Center. And Council Chair, that was a great suggestion of having library office hours. So learning things like that as we go, I think will help inform future endeavors that we work to implement.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is it a staff issue? Is it a technology issue? I mean, you said that you have an intern that's gathering data. Like, you know, you've had to. So that to me says you've had to wait to get another person to help you get the information that you need for other parts of the program. So I just would like to know that for future as we look to, you know, going through the budget cycle again, and know that information, because we all talked about when we passed the plan, like how much we wanted it to be a priority, and I want to make sure that the budget decisions that we make are reflecting that that's a priority, and that we're sticking to that commitment that we made to following this plan and funding this plan before we move on to other plans that also purport to do great things. The other question I wanted to ask, which is, I don't remember if this is contemplated in Thriving in Place, but it was brought up to me recently about the number of unrelated persons that are allowed to live in that per house and per unit in Salt Lake City. Is that something that makes sense to look at as part of all of this, or?
I believe the planning division is looking into that. Okay. I know I've had conversations around that topic. I don't know the status of that, though.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Pui.
Thank you. Two quick questions. I mean, you created a new tools for our renters. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of. I appreciate the work that you guys are putting into this. It means a lot to, as you probably hear from all of us, the importance about this. Thank you, Councilmember Young, for pointing this out. I wonder if the materials to the community about these resources are also available in Spanish and in other languages. That would be one of the questions I think is very important to me. But it's just a thought, and you probably already had this thought or not. But you know, the apartment complexes, as far as I understand, of any size, as far as if they are legal, they have to file a business license with the city, which I think is probably the closest we get to find out that those exist, and we know how many units I think that are participating on that. Could the city potentially request a posting of a poster at some place in the building? It's somehow common in other states that there are some resources posted in the lobby or in the elevator, and we could potentially reach out to all the neighbors across the city to say these are the resources that are happening out there, and it keeps. I think it could be a good opportunity for us to reach out to the greater audience that might need to access this information.
Yeah, thank you. We can take that feedback. That's a great idea of trying to reach out to landlords and meet people where they're at. Thank you.
I just want to.
Yes, and in language, at a minimum, Spanish and English. We're hoping that we can get
Arabic.
Other translations as well. In the contract, there is language about interpretation services, so we're working on that.
I also want to, when we have programs that have long existed and we have to retrofit them and retro engineer efficiencies into them and technology, it's difficult, but that's what you have to do. I really would love to see everything that we have here to be presented to us budgetarily and programmatically comprehensive of what is required. I don't like that I still don't have metrics for all the alternative response models, but those were created quickly. I don't want in 3 years to be asking you, is this successful? How do we know if it's successful? Please engineer them with at least the metrics that are reflective of the basic mission. We'll always be pains in the butt and we'll always ask for another metric. I get that. Like you can't foresee what we're always gonna ask. But at least with metrics that are responsive directly to the mission and what the outcomes you are expecting from each program. And when we see a budget, please have whatever technology, personnel you need to be able to do that. If we choose to not fund it, then we'll do so at our own peril, and you can say, I would love to provide those metrics to you, but you didn't fund it, right? But please present it to us comprehensively. I do not want to go back and retrofit this and reverse engineer those efficiencies. It's okay to fail. It's not okay to continue failing because we're not tracking where success is. So this is, I'm so thankful for all of the innovations we're trying here. I want to make sure that we know which ones are responsive to our Salt Lake City constituents so we can go as deeply as we can and give our constituents the best out of it. Council, anything else? Thank you to both departments for that. Thank you for allowing us to de-silo for a second and kind of see how they align together. And we look forward to doing our budgetary duties by you all. All right. With that, we're going to pivot to item number 4 on our agenda, which is an ordinance for the Economic Development Loan Fund for Ski Trucks, LLC. Austin Kimmel, Council Policy Analyst, is joining us, as will Roberta Reichelt, Director of Business Development, and Andy Fledman, Economic Development Project Manager. Austin, I'll turn the time over to you.
Great. Thank you, council members. This is an Economic Development Loan Fund, or ELF loan, to Ski Trucks, LLC. Ski Trucks, LLC is a family-owned and operated full-service ski and snowboard shop. The EDLF Loan Committee recommends the council approve a $300,000 loan at a 6.75 fixed rate over 7 years. The loan would help create 2 new jobs in the next year and help retain 12 existing ones. It would also help pay for working capital. An earlier version of my staff report mistakenly listed that it would also help pay for acquisition and machinery and equipment, but that has since been corrected. This loan is recommended at a lower interest rate than those you reviewed and approved last week. This is because the application for the loan was initially submitted in 2022. In accordance with practice at the time, the department applied the prime interest rate at the time of the initial application, as it worked with the applicant through the rest of the process. The department has since updated how it applies prime interest rates to loans and is prepared to expand upon that today if you wish to learn more. I should also note that the council may allow this loan to proceed as proposed or may request a change to its interest rate, and that is detailed a bit more in policy question number 2. And with all of that, I will now turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Austin. Council members, good to be with you. We're excited to present this loan to you. Long-standing West Side business, has been around since the 60s, family-owned, and as you read, that was recently passed on from generation in 2020. And the new owners, the children, are in the stage of taking this business to modernization and to the next level so they can continue to grow and offer more products to the community. More activities. So, yeah, if you have any questions, we are available.
Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the conversation and the education on this loan. And it's I love the program. I love the idea that we're giving loans to small businesses in the local area that really need the funding and they can't get it anywhere else but besides coming to us. And I also appreciate that what we're trying to do here is this loan was started 2 years ago, and so it's more of a policy question, because if I owned a business 2 years ago and but didn't apply for a loan because I didn't have all my ducks in a row, but now I do, and I'm paying a lot higher interest rate than someone who requested for a loan 2 years ago and now has come about and said, now I have my ducks in a row, now I want the funding, but now I'm going to get this interest rate that's a lot less than what is currently being offered. I have a tough time with that. But I also understand that it was kind of our policy that we just give you the loan rate at the initial, but we don't give you we have to close a deal at this time to maintain that loan. So can you, and I'm kind of talking in circles here, I apologize. Can you tell me what we're doing going forward and when we're going to see this policy to kind of set in place that you need to have your loan and all the information available now in this time frame, and we don't just give you 2 years to then enforce this? Because if this loan if interest rates had gone the opposite direction, we would have probably said reapply so you can get the lower rates. But now, since interest rates went the other direction, we're going to give you the better deal of the two.
Yeah.
Can you tell me where we're going with this in the future?
Yeah. No, this loan was definitely an anomaly. As you guys know, we do say that our loans take longer than normal. Our applicants usually don't have all their ducks in a row, and so to get all the information, it does take longer. So we always have had that. 2 years is a first. We've never seen that, obviously. And, at the same time, the interest rates for most municipal programs, we've done a lot of research on how people charge their interest rates. And they're tied to prime because prime is pretty steady for the most part. We just happened, during these 2 years, we happened to go through an unprecedented climb in interest rates that went up to almost 500 basis points in 1 year. If you went 2 years before that, you wouldn't have even seen the change in prime. So it's also just the circumstances of the times that this happened. However, with that said, this long application brought to light that, we need to have, there's a point at which we need to reset, absolutely, when it's changing like that. And so instead of, we put in our loan committee expressed us to put a new procedure in place right away. And so that new procedure is we have our applications in Part A and Part B. Part A is just an overview that shows you, are you qualified? Are you eligible? Can you move on to the next round, which is Part B, which is the meat of the application. That's where we're collecting all their documentation, helping them through the process, getting their projections. So really, that's when we would like to set a 90-day period at Part B, which is also when they pay the application fee to kind of initiate that. And then at the end of 90 days, if Part B is not completed, then we'll reset the interest rate at what it is. This allows us to, instead of at the time of closing, it allows us to set the interest rate so it doesn't change after underwriting, because once we go to underwriting, that sets the debt coverage ratio and things like that. If the interest rate's changing, that could change essentially their debt coverage ratio, which could change loan committee's approval or decision of the loan. So we don't want it to change after the underwriting. And that's, after the underwriting's done, it's just going through city approval processes. We're not waiting on the borrower anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd like to have it, written in so people can see this too. And also, in this case, the loan is changing hands. Yes, it's staying in the family business, and I understand the reasons why it's staying in that. But normally a loan stays with the business, so if the business changes hands, then the loan would also change too. So with our new policy, would this loan still be able to keep that same rate? Because it changed hands.
So it didn't change, it changed hands before they applied. So it wasn't like the previous owner that had applied.
Okay,
It
so
was yeah, that was just background to tell everybody that in 2020 is when the business went from father to son.
okay,
But
so
it,
it was
it was
before-
applied with the same applicants.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we, going forward, 'cause someone else is, I'm asking for a loan right now, and 2 years ago I wasn't ready for it, but now I am, and I'm going to pay 4 extra points for the loan.
Yeah.
And that's my whole concern. I appreciate this, and I love the idea that we're having a small business in the North Temple, and, you know, they're going to employ people, and it's going to be, you know, going to be successful. I'm looking at it from another perspective.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that policy, but I'm also really thrilled because this is one of those businesses that's been taking a risk on North Temple long time before it gets cool, and I want to make sure they have what they need to stay competitive and keep up with what we know is coming. Councilmember Pui, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. So.
We share a brain, you and I. Councilmember Mono,
Oh, no, I have nothing.
anything else?
If I can
Yes.
just add, this is going to be on the October 15th agenda for action, and a public hearing is not required for this item.
All right, council, anything else? All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're to the report of the chair, vice chair. Vice chair, anything? Here.
Oh, I'm going to take my vice chair privilege just to tell anyone listening that I'm having a Spill the Tea in District 3 event at Mestizo Coffee on October 10th at 6 o'clock, and anyone can come and ask any questions that they have about all the things that are going on in our great city. So I hope people will come. Thanks.
All right. I don't have anything. Report of the executive director. I want to thank this council for the work you did last week. We cleared out a massive amount of huge things. I'm really proud of everything we did for the city, and in 15, 20 years, I look forward to grabbing a drink with you all and looking at what happened because of last week. So thank you, and with that, we will adjourn so we can enjoy this evening. Thank you.